What's up guys, and welcome to my 4.2 updated Yunli guide. Yunli is one of the 3 characters added to the selection of 50/50 lost pool, and so today I'm going to be taking you over everything you do need to know in order to understand and build her, including a kit overview, best Lightcones, best Relic sets and planar ornaments, main sets you want to run and substat priority, and finally some general team building. Yunli's basic attack does physical damage based off her attack to a designated enemy. Her skill will first restore HP equal to 30% of Yunli's attack plus 200, then will do physical damage based off her attack to a designated enemy and physical damage to adjacent targets. Her ultimate consumes 120 energy, where Yunli will parry and taunt all enemies, lasting until the end of the next ally's action or enemy's turn. Yunli's next counter's crit damage dealt will be increased by 100%, and triggering her counter from her talent will instead launch into it Cole and will remove the parry effect. If no counter is triggered when parry is active, Yunli will instead launch counter into its slash on a random enemy target. Into its slash deals physical damage equal to 220% of Yunli's attack to the target and deals physical damage equal to 110% of her attack to adjacent targets. Into it Cole will deal physical damage equal to 220% of Yunli's attack to the target and physical damage equal to 110% of Yunli's attack to adjacent targets, and will additionally deal 6 instances of damage, each doing physical damage equal to 72% of Yunli's attack to a random enemy. Her talent makes Yunli launch a counter attack when she is attacked and also regenerate 15 energy, with the counter attack doing physical damage equal to 120% of her attack to the attacker and physical damage equal to 60% of her attack to adjacent targets. Her technique gives Yunli the ward effect for 20 seconds, where entering battle with it active either by enemies attacking you or you attacking enemies, will immediately cast into it Cole on a random enemy and increases the damage dealt by the attack by 80%. For bonus traces, her A2 after the use of Intuit Slash, the next Intuit Slash will be replaced by Intuit Cole. Her A4 will make it to where while she's in the parry state, resist crowd control debuffs received and reduces damage received by 20%. And her A6 will increase Yunli's attack by 30% for one turn when using a counter. For Eidolons, her E1 will increase the damage by Intuit Slash and Intuit Cole by 20%, and the number of additional damage instances for Intuit Cole will be increased by 3. Her E2 makes all her damage via a counter ignore 20% of the target's defense. Her E4 increases Yunli's effect res by 50% for one turn when launching Intuit Slash or Intuit Cole. And her E6, while parry is active, if enemy actively uses their abilities, regardless of whether it attacks Yunli or not, it will trigger Intuit Cole and remove the parry effect. Dealing damage via Intuit Slash or Intuit Cole will increase crit rate by 15% and physical res pen by 20%. For best Lightcone options, her best in slot is still her own signature, providing the wear 36% crit damage, and also greatly increasing the chance for the wearer to be attacked. Wearer using ultimate will give them a stack of fire dance to last for 2 turns and stacks up to 2 times, with both increasing the damage dealt by the follow-up attack by 36%. The taunt is the biggest part of this Lightcone because you want Yunli to be the one to get attacked as much as possible, not only so she can retaliate with the most amount of counters, but also for the fact it gives you the best energy, since if she's the one getting hit, she gets the most energy, and also free 36% crit damage, so that's extra stats for her. The biggest source of Yunli's damage is the enhanced counter, which is from the ultimate, so stacking this up is also very simple, so you can get up to a 72% increase to follow-up damage, and her counters are considered follow-up, so that is buffing her main source of damage for a up to massive, again, 72% increase. So this Lightcone really just gives you a bunch of things. If it had some form of energy regen, I think this Lightcone would be perfect for her, but even then it's still perfect because it just provides everything you'd necessarily need. So overall, Yunli's signature option is her best in slot. This next one is really good situationally, and that is fine on signature Lightcone. Provides the wearer 12 base speed, dealing damage will ignore 18% of the target's defense. We're using ultimate, which will gain Blazing Sun for the wearer and will be removed at the start of the turn. Holding Blazing Sun will increase the wearer's damage by 60%. The reason I say situational is because of mainly these first 2 aspects. The base speed increase does actually remove one of her synergies with a relic set option that I'll talk about once we get to it. Thankfully, that relic set is not her best in slot, but it is still a really good option. And for the 18% defense ignore, this is mainly if you have other sources, like you have it invested in support such as E2 Sparkle, E1 Sunday. Since with defense ignore / shred, you want to stack up as much as possible. In that case, you're going to need a good amount for it to actually be an exponential increase. So this Lightcone actually helping you with that is very good. So this is more of like a higher invested in setup, like even at lower sided stuff, like if this is just it with maybe one other source, that's still fine. Like it's still doing its job, it's doing good. And there's also easier ways to have it with lower sided investments, such as characters that just have innate defense shred like Asheville, OG Silverwolf, and also if you have like a Lightcone like Cyphers. There's ways to get it up is what I'm trying to say. This part would just require you to actually weave in the ultimate before her turn begins because it's removed at the start, so you do need to weave it while an enemy is about to attack you before Yunli's turn starts. So this last part actually is usable, just you would need to use it before your turn starts, which honestly is mostly gonna be always. So this last part is actually very usable, which makes this actually one of the best options to use, especially if you do have what I'm talking about and you're not running that relic set that we're going to get into soon. Blade Signature also does work with 18% crit rate and 18% max HP for the wearer. Where being attacked or consumed, their HP will increase their damage by 24% and is removed after the wearer uses an attack. Crit rate is very important on Yunli. She hits so many times and you want to get 100%. Max HP isn't the greatest, but you are going to get hit a lot, so it is some extra survivability. And this last part is also usable. You get hit, damage increases, you throw out the counter, boom, that's really it. So 24% damage overall, so this is very simple yet effective for a Lightcone. Isle Dawning's Lightcone is also usable with 18% crit rate, where using basic attack will give them Dragon Call for 2 turns. Each stack of Dragon's Call increases the wearer's attack by 18% and regen rate by 6%, that stacks up to 2 times. As I mentioned with Blade's Lightcone, crit rate, very important. The only problem with this is Yunli is a character where you want to skill as much as possible because it has self-sustain and also just gives you more energy. So this needing to weave in basic attacks is less overall energy gain, but it is made up for the fact that you do get more energy, so it can potentially even out, plus you're also getting more attack. But yeah, you just need to weave in basic attacks to stack this up, and in that case you are getting more attack and energy regen rate, which are both very good. So if you are able to find the rotation to weave in basic attacks, this Lightcone is also usable. It's still worse than the other ones that I mentioned, but it's still good. You can also use the standard Lightcone for Clara with 24% attack for the wearer. When the wearer defeats an enemy or is hit, restores HP equal to 8% of the wearer's attack, and the wearer's damage increases by 24% until the end of their next turn. Cannot stack and triggers once per turn. 24% attack is nice, some extra survivability as well, and also some damage. So it's still very much worse than the other ones. As you can tell, this isn't like a crazy amount, but it's just solid. And since it is standard, there's chances you have refinements in it, so that also does apply. Free to play Lightcone from her to shop also is good, giving the wearer 8% attack in the battle. Anytime they do attack, that stacks up to 4 times, and breaking an enemy's weakness will increase damage up by 12% for 2 turns. At S5, the attack stacks become 16%, with a 24% increase to damage dealt when breaking weakness. So up to a 64% increase to attack, which is very, very good. Although it would require you to defeat enemies, so usually in the form of defeating enemies on the side to have it stacked. This last part is a bit inconsistent with Yunli, especially when there's multiple enemies on the field. It can be different because she does have a bounce counter when you do have Intuit Cole, but when it is active, it's actually very solid. When this effect isn't active, which might be more often than not, does make the Lightcone fall off in performance, so do keep that in mind. But overall, a very solid free-to-play option. For 4 stars, you can actually use the Battle Pass Lightcone Bygone Blood for 12% increase to crit rate for the wearer, and skill and ultimate damage increased by the wearer by 24%. At S5, 20% crit rate, 40% ultimate and skill damage. The reason this is usable is because 1, really good amount of crit rate at S5. 2, her actual ultimate counters are considered ultimate damage. Because of that, this part is actually going to be increasing it. Unfortunately, it's not going to affect her counters outside of it. So the regular counter, the ones that are not enhanced by the ultimate, it will not be having this buff, but you're mainly focusing on Intuit Cole, or if you have to use Intuit Slash for whatever reason, they are going to be getting the buff, and that's the biggest source of damage. And also her skill does do damage, so that's also getting a nice increase there. So that's why this Lightcone is actually very, very solid on her too. Under the Blue Sky also does work with 16% attack, 12% crit rate for the wearer when defeating an enemy for 3 turns. At S5, 32% wearer attack and 24% crit rate. So to get the full effect of this Lightcone, you will need to defeat someone to get a massive crit rate increase, which can help a lot on her building portion. So do make sure there's an enemy on the side you can kill to have this up very frequently. Since the moment this is not up, it's just 32% attack, which is okay, but you really want the full effect of this Lightcone for it to be good. Ninja Records Sound Hunt also isn't the worst. 1, it's free to play. 2, it does give max HP, which, like I mentioned with Blade Signature, it's not useless, but it's not something to focus on. But when losing or restoring the unit's HP, increases crit damage by 18% for 2 turns and triggers once per turn. And at S5, it is 36% crit damage with 24% max HP. Mainly focusing on the crit damage here, it's very easy to have this since Yunli's constantly going to be attacked, or you're going to be constantly healing her. So it's really just a permanent 36% increase to crit damage with also some max HP. And also with the HP restoration of her skill, it also procs it. So yeah, it's really just permanently up. For Yunli's best relic sets, her best in slot overall is still 4-piece Wind Soaring, 2-piece providing 12% attack, 4-piece increasing the wearer's crit rate by 6%. After the wearer uses a follow-up attack, increases damage dealt by ultimate by 36% for 1 turn. So the 2-piece will increase all sources of her damage since she is attack scaling. 4-piece makes her easier to build with 6% crit rate and also provides a 36% damage increase for her actual main source of damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't impact her actual follow-up attack since it's increasing ultimate damage, and do remember Intuit Coil /slash is also considered ultimate damage, so it is getting increased by this, but the actual follow-up attack you would get outside of ultimate is just there to stack up this set. Unfortunately, it is not going to be getting buffed by this, but since it is emphasizing on the main way and practically all the damage she's going to do, which is VIA Intuit Coil, and giving it a pretty solid increase at that, 36% damage percent is very solid, makes this still her best in slot to run. Another good set on her situationally is the Poet set, which the 2-piece is useless, the 4-piece decreases wearer speed by 8%, and before entering battle if the wearer speed is lower than 110/95, the wearer's crit rate increases by 20%/32% and also applies the memo spray, which you ignore since Yunli doesn't have a memo spray. So a 32% increase to crit rate is going to be very good since you don't build speed on Yunli anyways, but you do remember when I was mentioning a relic set that you weren't able to run if you were running Finance Lightcone, that is this set right here. Yunli's base speed is 94, so you can lose 8% more, so it would take you down to the mid 80s. However, with Finance Lightcone, you would still be over 95 regardless, even if you don't have a speed roll. So you would not be able to run Finance Lightcone if you want to run this, because then you would get the 20%, which is still okay, but you wouldn't get the full 32%, as that's what this relic set does provide, a bunch of crit rate, and you want to get the biggest amount as possible. If you're not running Finance Lightcone, like if you're running Signature or anything else, in that case, you also still would have some leeway. You just want to make sure you build below 95. Yunli isn't built with speed anyways, so you just ignore speed entirely, and you can get a bunch of crit rate, which can help you allocate more to crit damage and attack percent. You still get close to 100% as possible, but it is significantly easier because 32% crit rate is a lot. So Poet set is also very good on her. You can also use Ash Blazing Grand Duke set with the 2-piece increasing damage up by follow-up attacks by 20%. 4-piece, when the wearer uses a follow-up attack, increases the wearer's attack by 6% for every time the follow-up attack deals damage that stacks up to 8 times and lasts for 3 turns, and will be removed the next time the wearer uses a follow-up attack. So 2-piece will also increase her main source of damage, being all forms of her follow-up attack, so the regular one, Coil / so on. 4-piece is fully stacked when she is using Intuit Coil, as Intuit Coil hits a lot of times. Unfortunately for the regular one or slash, you're not going to be able to get the full one, but you're mainly focusing on Intuit Coil anyways, so you can get the full effect of the 4-piece by using Intuit Coil, which makes this not better than the other two that I did mention when they are applicable, but still solid. Champion set is also usable with 2-piece increasing physical damage by 10%. 4-piece, after the wearer attacks or is hit, their attack increases by 5% for the rest of the battle, stacking up to 5 times. 2-piece also increases all sources of damage since she is physical. 4-piece provides you up to a 25% increase to attack, which is very easy to stack since Yunli will get hit and she'll counter. That's 2 stacks right there. So you just need to get hit and counter practically just 6 times technically, since you would get 6 there, but you just need to hit, counter, and then when you're hit, that would be fully stacked. Very easy to stack up. It's still worse than the other ones, but it is still usable. So if you do have a 4-piece laying around, it is fine. Other than that, you would do 2-piece, so you can do 2-piece crit, combine that with 2-piece of one of the attack percent stats, or 2-piece of the champion set. Since 2-piece champion increases physical damage, attack is what she scales off of, so you can run musketeer, you can run 2-piece prisoner, 2-piece wind soaring, 2-piece hero. For crit, if you need crit rate, world remaking or scholar. For crit damage, wave strider or ever glorious. For planar ornaments, you still want to run Durin, as it does give you up to a 25% increase to follow-up attack damage, and also an additional 25% crit damage, and the requirement is just team using follow-up attacks, which Yunli can stack it up by herself pretty much, since she is going to attack a lot. VIA her counters, and that is considered a follow-up attack. So for the best value of an ornament, it's going to be this, as again, 25% follow-up damage with 25% crit damage is good. You can still also use Inertial Sawdle with 8% crit rate. 50% or higher crit rate will increase damage up by wearer's ultimate and follow-up attack damage by 15%. Makes it easier to build. 50% crit rate should not be hard, and you're getting a damage increase for her main sources of damage, follow-up attack, ultimate. So this actually would also affect her follow-up attack rather than just the ultimate. So it is worse than Durin, but if you do have pieces laying around, Sawdle is fine. For the main stats on the relics, for the body, you're mainly going to run crit rate, but if you do have really good crit rate rolls, or maybe you're running poet that lets you net 100% crit rate in battle without actually running a crit rate body, in that case, feel free to run a crit damage body. For the feet, you run attack percent. For the orb, physical damage is the best, but you can run attack percent if you have a really good orb, but aim for a physical orb. And for the link rope, attack percent usually is better than energy regen on Yunli especially, but if Yunli's energy regen rope is going to net you an extra 2-ish ultimates, then in that case it can outperform, but usually and consistently attack percent does outperform. For the substats, you just focus on crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. Crit rate, again, your goal on her is 100%. You don't want to miss your crits, so 100% crit rate on Yunli is also very achievable and you just want to get it. Then you would focus on getting as much crit damage as possible. It doesn't have to be an insane amount because do remember her ultimate does enhance the crit damage dealt by her counter by 100%, so just aiming around 130% or 140% is fine, but if you can get higher than that, then that's even better. Attack percent, you're aiming for around 3300. If you're running poet specifically, do keep in mind that you do not want to roll speed. In general, you don't want to roll speed, but I do want to have a disclaimer. If you are running poet, be sure you don't go above 95 because then the full effect will not work. Also, if you are running poet, then you need 68% crit rate because in battle that's 100%, so also keep that in mind. Now for team building on Yunli. Yunli's team is relatively straightforward. Usually the second slot would go to an action advancer that is built hyperspeed. So the best one for that now is Sparkle, but Sunday hyperspeed is fine just because his energy is very, very good for Yunli, but Sparkle would net you overall more damage. So for this example, I'm going to put Sparkle. The third slot would go to another Amper, so it could be someone that's like a sub DPS. It could just go to another Amper overall. Asheville is very good in this role, as his defense shred is very good. If you have his Lightcone vulnerability, E1 more vulnerability, the stuff he does provide is very solid, plus he's also another source of damage, which is going to help with performance a lot. But in the slot, you can very much use someone like Tribby. She's very good for damage amp on this team. Cypher also works great. You could even use OG Silverwolf in this slot. Honestly, RMC also does work since you're running hyperspeed Sunday, so she can't really mess up with tuning, but just be sure you don't get to the point where you action advance with Sunday and then immediately mem turn procs, and that's kind of just like a waste. Robin can also go in the slot if you don't have any of the other options, so there are quite a few options for the slot. So in my case, I'm just going to put Asheville. Last slot is going to be Sustain. I'm not really going to recommend Sustain this with Yunli because while it is possible with her self-sustain, you're still going to be taking a lot of hits, and especially nowadays in 4.x, enemies do a lot of damage, so there's very few cases where you'll actually pull off a Sustainless run. So I generally do not recommend you doing Sustainless anymore. So usually the Sustain slots would go to Popo, especially after her buff, since she is able to provide some solid buffs with attack to the whole team as well. Plus the energy is something Yunli does like. However, competitive in that slot is still Dawning because he could be another source of damage and also has practically the best sustainability in the game besides Hyacinth, which in Hyacinth's case, you can also use her as if you don't have the other two options available. So Popo and Dawning would be your number one options. If not that, you can use Hyacinth or whatever options available to you, such as Aventurion. He works well with Yunli as well, Luotra, so on and so forth. And that is the full 4.2 updated Yunli guide. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, drop a like, it would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of Star Wars content. I'll see you later. Peace out.